Bunkhouse Stampede, 1986, December 13th, Baltimore Civic Center. It's my first National Wrestling Alliance show in Baltimore. I'm a suburban kid from Northern Virginia. It's my birthday was a few days earlier. My mother, taking me to the show with a friend of mine. My mom did not want to go to see the show. She had been to wrestling before, but she decided to explore the Inner Harbor. And this is apparently a time when, my mom felt safe kind of walking around the Inner Harbor of Baltimore on a Sunday night for several hours. I think the show started at an unusual 4 p.m. start time. So this is me getting out of the comfort zone of the Landover, Maryland Capitol Center and going to the big city of Baltimore. Now, the Landover, Maryland Capitol Center was really just a location venue where there was nothing around it. It was just, that was it. The Capitol Center was its own thing. Baltimore Civic Center is right in the middle of the city. And I think just a few months later it was renamed the Baltimore Arena, but at this time it was the Baltimore Civic Center. It's about a 13 or 14,000 seat arena. They still use it. I think it's still being used to this day for WWF shows like the Great American Bash. I think that even the WWE used it. I said WWF, but WCW used that place for that Benoit Sullivan Great American Bash where Kevin Nash powerbombed Bischoff through the table. This is going way back to the corridors of my memory, folks. We get there for the show, and we had about, I want to say 13th row on the floor. Pretty good seat, still a kid, so it's, but could still see pretty well. And this really is what opened my mind even further how much different the NWA was than WWF at the time. And this type of video, mark this down as a historical lesson for you young wrestling fans, or even, getting older wrestling fans who may not know what the NWA was like because it wasn't around, or it was a manifestation of WCW. But at this time, we come in there, and the first thing I noticed is that the hot dogs were cheaper, and that they had security at the Baltimore Civic Center. Like, we all had to get scanned, like with a metal detector or some such thing. They didn't do that in the Capitol Center for wrestling, as far as I remember. Maybe they did. And just learning pretty quickly that in Baltimore, you want to wear your wallet in your front right pocket, Baltimore style, which I still do to this day. But, back then, you're a kid, you have a wallet, you put in your back pocket or whatever, but now it's front right pocket, folks. The show started with Shaska Whatley versus Brad Armstrong. And these two guys were what you would call a definition of worker's worker. Guys that could work the entire card. Now, many people would just know Pistol Pez Whatley or Shaska Whatley as a kind of mid-card or underneath guy. He had the tag team with the Jive Tones. He ended up doing some jobs for WWF towards the end of his career, Shaska Whatley or Pez Whatley. But really, he was very fucking talented, and just another guy. Even back then in the 80s, there was wrestlers. You talk about Finn Balor today or other talents that seem to be being misused, but back then it was a guy like Shaska Whatley and Brad Armstrong for that matter. So Brad was pretty much the quintessential guy who was better than his rank, so to speak, and just didn't have the mic skills or didn't want to use those skills or whatever. You've heard Road Dogg talk about the late great Brad Armstrong, but a hell of a worker. So these guys go to a 20-minute draw. And I just remember, that opening match was just, I don't want to say better than everything I'd seen on a WWF show, but just for an opener, it certainly was. The next match, I want to say, was, I'm trying to remember, I think it was the Kansas City Jayhawks, which was Bobby Jaggers and Dutch Mantell. Now, some of you might know Dutch Mantell for his work with Alberto Del Rios, or his podcasts, or his work with TNA, Zeb, Uncle Zeb, or whatever the fuck. But Dutch Mantell and this guy named Bobby Jaggers were a tag team called the Kansas City Jayhawks, and they were wrestling the Russians, which I believe was Crusher Khrushchev, and Ivan Koloff. Now, we're literally just days away from Crusher Khrushchev, Barry Dawsaw, leaving to go over to the WWF to start Demolition. So this is really the end of, Barry Dawsaw in fucking NWA. And they had already lost the tag team titles, the United States tag team titles, because we had seen that match that morning on television. So, leaving the home the day of, we knew that this was not going to be a United States tag team title match because the Russians had lost the belts to Barry Windham and Ronnie Garvin. So it was kind of a lame duck match for the Jayhawks. I want to say that they won either by a pinfall or by a disqualification because of the chain usage. And what was the next match? It was a good match. It wasn't, like I said, kind of a lame duck match. When you've got like a champion challenger thing, and then somebody shows up and they've lost the belts, the champions, and then you've got another, whoever was supposed to be the challengers are no longer really going to be the challengers. The next match, I believe, was Ronnie Garvin versus Big Bubba Rogers at a Lights Out match. Now this was, they might have called it a Louisville Street Fight Lights Out match. And the Lights Out component of this particular Lights Out match was a guy has to get knocked out for 10 seconds to lose. And it was I was a big Ronnie Garvin fan. Somehow, I think Jim Cornette whacked Ronnie over the back with the fucking tennis racket, and fucking Bubba won the match. And I think they had the same result at Starrcade 86 a couple weeks earlier on Thanksgiving night of 86. So this was kind of a rematch. A lot of stuff was rematched from Starrcade 86. The next match was also a Starrcade match. It was the Road Warriors versus the Midnight Express. Yes, the Dennis Condrey, Bobby Eaton match. I saw those guys. That version of the Midnights, Condrey and Eaton. And a shout out to Dennis Condrey, I guess. He's doing better now, or he had some medical issue that Jim Cornette was twittering about. So best to Dennis, Mr. Condrey. So the match, I liked it because it was not a scaffold match. Now, guess what, folks? I'm not really into scaffold matches. I think it's too much of a risk. It's just not into scaffold matches. So this was a normal match. And the Road Warriors won. I'm pretty damn sure the Road Warriors won. It was a hell of a lot of fun. And when they talk about Road Warrior pop, meaning the sound that the Road Warriors make when they come out to that arena, and being a young kid and being from the suburbs, and you're in the fucking city and you're hearing that Road Warrior pop for the first time, that's something right there. And Precious Paul and everybody. The next match was a world title match, 5th match on the show. There's only 6 matches on this show. The show was 4.5 hours long. Nikita Koloff challenging Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight title. Now again, a Starrcade rematch. And just 55, I think the match was literally 56 minutes long of watching Ric Flair. And as a kid, I'm not thinking like, oh, Flair's, handling this guy, or Flair's teaching this guy, or Flair's, guiding Nikita. You're thinking you're watching an actual fucking match. And yeah, we weren't idiots. We knew he was predetermined, whatever, but just getting into it. And that's another thing about today's wrestling fan that they may or may not ever understand. I think they do. But despite the WWE with their tough enoughs and their bullshit and these shoot interviews, giving everything away about wrestling, the magic that Nikita and fucking Ric Flair created was just wonderful. And the match ended, unfortunately for everyone, because you're always kind of cheering the title change. And that's one thing about wrestling that I think persists, is sometimes, people, I don't know if they get confused, or why did this bad guy or heel or whatever the fuck get cheered when they won the title from this babyface? Well, why did Triple H, the crowd counted to 3 when Triple H pinned Steve Austin at that 3 Layers of Hell match, or whatever the fuck it was, like in 2000 or whatever the fuck? Because the crowd often cheers for the title change, okay? Now in this case, with the NWA, and you mostly had Ric Flair, before him Harley Race, or Funk, Dory Funk Jr. as they call him, you could cheer for the babyface to win the title and want that title change and the babyface to win. So Nikita just took it to fucking Flair, man. And it was a hardcore fucking match. And Flair got disqualified like the 56-minute mark by dropping Nikita over the top rope. Now what I love about that is it just shows you, you just went 56 fucking minutes to end on an over-the-top rope DQ. And the brilliance of it, it's not that, the ending is kind of shitty, but it's like, well, that's all you got. You're not going to have Flair pin this guy, Nikita. I guess you could have, but, you're trying to keep this babyface strong. You're trying to keep this feud going. So, I guess my point is, why the fuck not have a DQ? It's so great that they would actually work for fucking 56 fucking minutes for you. And then the final match, the main event. The main event, baby. The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, Tully Blanchard. I believe Arn Anderson was in there. I can totally remember Tully. Some of the guys on the rest of the show. I think Bubba came back, the Midnights. I'm not sure if Garvin did. Barry Windham was in this thing. Yes, the Bunkhouse Stampede. And this was just like a big fucking deal. And see, I think what the people don't know now is, if their only video proof of what a Bunkhouse Stampede was that cage match from '88, they're kind of missing out that these Bunkhouse Stampedes actually were fucking good if you saw one live. And this thing was about an hour long. That's why this show, and my mom, bless her heart, kept coming back to the fucking Baltimore Civic Center to see if this fucking wrestling was over. No cell phones. And the show was going on and on and on. And it's a 4.5 hour show. And 4.5 hours. And it came down, I think it came down to Dusty and Bubba, as usual, that year in '86. And of course, the American Dream, baby. And I think the final 4 were Dusty, Barry, Tully, and Bubba, if I'm not mistaken. And somehow Dusty won it. And it was kind of a cool thing, because Bubba had just beaten Ronnie Garvin earlier in the goddamn night, and now Dusty kind of avenges the good side of things. I remember watching, well, I'll just stick with the narrative. It was just an awesome event, and they all wear their fucking jeans and their cowboy boots and all that shit, just like you've seen it. And it's just one of these things where the network or young wrestling fans, I make these videos to share with you the insights of someone who lived through this fucking shit. Is going to tell you how great things were, okay? So when you sit there and you watch your fucking Bullet Club and your Too Sweet shows and your web series with your wrestlers, and you have to appreciate that we were coming from a totally different place with wrestling. Not totally different, but different. And it wasn't about cute little web series or 30 super kicks a match or how long can you grow your hair or, can you have intergender wrestling. It wasn't about that. It was about real fucking men wrestling real goddamn matches, okay? So I try not to get hot. I try not to get pissed. I try to use this as an educational tool for the young wrestling fan. And, but at the same time, I realize, hey, when I was a young wrestling fan, I don't know if I'd want someone telling me that Kill Carl Krupp and Fritz von Erich had a wonderful Texas death match in the Sportatorium in 1956 or whatever the fuck, or oh, you should have been there when Dory Funk and Jack Briscoe wrestled 90-minute draws halfway across the country. I mean, so I do get it that if you're grown up on this, you know, whatever the fuck, if you're growing up with Chuck Taylor and all these assholes on the independent scene sticking their thumbs in each other's asses, if that's what you're used to, that's what you're used to. But I'm trying to share with you fucks some of my childhood, okay? So, Dusty Rhodes winning the Bunkhouse Stampede, and just feeling like, holy shit, I was just at a real 4.5-hour wrestling show with 6 matches. I mean, Armstrong and fucking Pez, 20 minutes. Midnights and Road Warriors were probably at least 20 minutes. Everything. That Jayhawks match. Nikita and Flair, an hour, okay? The Garvin match was pretty long. So, just a different fucking animal than the WWF. And I'll do some wrestle rides about my memories with the WWF, because they had some good stuff too. But this is the fucking part. This is that fucking human aspect. You know, when they make these WWE DVDs or these fucking self-congratulatory documentaries about how Vince had this vision for the business and how it wasn't the smoky cigar-filled auditoriums and all that shit that they like to say over and over again. Well, guess what, assholes? I lived through that fucking dying days of the territories, okay? So, I just have a different appreciation and respect for the foundation of the back fucking bone of this sport. And maybe Vince himself doesn't have that, okay? They condescend and they take that money from foreign countries. God damn it. So, folks, I'm telling you how it was. I remember going home and just really loving that goddamn show. And the next week on WTBS, they said that there was 2 Bunkhouse Stampedes, one in the same day by one man, in Philadelphia and Baltimore. And Dusty Rhodes had won 2 Battle Royals, as they called it, in the same day. And they were, you know, using the term Battle Royals. And never before in the history of the wrestling business had one man won 2 Battle Royals in the same day. And I don't know if that was hyperbole or whatnot. But the American dream, baby. Dusty Rhodes, live and in living color, you understand? Dusty Rhodes winning the Bunkhouse Stampede in Baltimore, Maryland. 7 o'clock at night, baby. Taking that custom jet to Philadelphia, baby. And winning another Bunkhouse Stampede Battle Royal, you understand? The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, right here, live in living color, winning the great challenge of the Bunkhouse Stampede. For all my children out there in television land, when you come out to see the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, you understand, with the Dusty Rhodes of the Tully Blanchard, the Big Bubba Rogers, or the Nature Boy Ricky Flair himself. You gotta know that big box office, big time wrestling lives and breathes with the American Dream. So that was the wrestling remembrance of me telling you what it was like to go to see the Great American Bash. Not the Great American Bash, the Bunkhouse Stampede. I saw Great American Bash. I saw a Starrcade. I saw a Bunkhouse Stampede. I mean, I saw the Crockett Cup. I really did. I saw a Super Brawl. I saw a Thunder. And so I really did have a connection to WCW, to the National Wrestling Alliance, whatever you want to call it, Crockett. I had a kinship to that promotion that when these wrestlers, sometimes the wrestlers are guilty of putting the NWA or WCW down. Well, they just don't get it themselves. MikeMessier.com, The American Dream in Public View